And just like that, oops, let me mute myself here. And just like that, we have a working Nextcloud Talk works for simple calls. But real online meetings with multiple people, that's where it breaks. Until you unlock this one thing. Now I can even record meetings. Fully self-hosted, of course. And this in Nextcloud is locked on purpose. Because with Nextcloud, you decide what you need. And when you need it, you just simply add it. Let me show you in this video why Talk works in simple calls, why it breaks in real meetings, and how to unlock it properly. Out of the box, Nextcloud Talk is actually fine. One-on-one calls work, even small team calls work. But once you try to use it like a real meeting tool, with multiple participants, longer calls, maybe even screen sharing, performance starts to drop. And recording meetings, that simply doesn't work at all by default. And this is where many people say Nextcloud Talk is fine, but it can't compete with Zoom or Teams. But let me tell you, that's not the full story. Nextcloud Talk can be unlocked to perform better. The reason is simple. By default, Nextcloud handles calls directly through the app server. And that's perfectly fine for small setups. But it doesn't scale. More users means more load, more latency, and more traffic overall. And recording isn't disabled because it's bad. It's disabled because the default setup can't handle it reliably. That's why you need a high performance backend and a recording backend to boost your performance in Nextcloud Talk. Without the high performance backend, Talk handles calls in a very direct way. A quick example, if you have 5 people in a call, each participant sends their audio and video to 4 other clients and also receives 4 streams in return. That means more users don't just add load, they multiply it. But the high performance backend completely changes this model. Each client only sends one audio and one video stream to the backend and receives a single optimized stream back. So instead of sending and receiving multiple streams, each participant only has to handle one stream for sending and one stream for receiving. This massively reduces load, not just on the Nextcloud server, but also on every single client. And that's the reason why you can't record a meeting without the high performance backend. Once you set up the performance and the recording backend, that's the moment when Nextcloud Talk really changes. From nice for small calls to usable for real meetings. And if data privacy matters to you, this setup is fully compliant to modern data protection requirements. And the good news is, the setup that I'm about to show you is not tied to a single installation method. It works with a bare metal Nextcloud installation, a Docker Compose setup, and even with the Nextcloud all-in-one setup. I think the all-in-one setup already comes with the high performance backend, but I'm not 100% sure. What I'm trying to say is, no matter how you run your Nextcloud, the concept stays the same. But enough theory, let's actually upgrade our Nextcloud setup. We're going to need a few things, nothing exotic. First, we need a running Nextcloud instance. I've prepared a fresh installation for us. Next, we need a Linux server with Docker and Docker Compose installed on it. I'm using a Ubuntu Server 24. This can either run on the same server as your Nextcloud or on a separate server. For larger installations though, a separate server might be the better choice. As long as we have Docker and Docker Compose and a reverse proxy, the setup works the same. And finally, we need some subdomains, typically one for signaling and one for recording. Again, these can all point to the same server, but they don't have to. Your existing Nextcloud setup stays untouched. User logins, files, apps, everything stays exactly the same. All we're doing is offloading real-time communication to a system that's actually designed for it. So in short, Nextcloud stays the same. The high performance backend and the recording backend can be on separate servers, and they all connected through a few dedicated subdomains. Let's start with the high performance backend. In here we need a dockercompose.yaml file with this content. The important thing here is that you need to open port 3478 TCP and UDP on your server. You can't route them through subdomains. and then port 8081 is going to be used for Nginx. And then make sure that you adjust those two lines here. One is the URL for your Nextcloud, and the other one is the URL for your high performance backend. And we also need some secrets as environment variables. We can generate the secrets with those commands here. They will append them directly into an environment file. So in the end, it should look something like this. You have your environment file and your dockercompose.yaml file. Let's have a look at the environment file. You have those turn secret, the signal secret, and the internal secret. And on top of that, we already generated a recording secret. We don't need that in the high performance backend, but we prepared that for the recording backend already. And with all that set up, we can start up our container with docker compose up-t. But the high performance backend isn't reachable yet. We need to configure our reverse proxy first. I'm using Nginx here, but it should work with any other reverse proxy as well. So first, we need a configuration file. It should have the server name of our subdomain and then also forward everything to the port of the high performance backend container. And now we create a symbolic link in sites enabled, and then we test the configuration with Nginx-t. Everything looks fine, so we can request the certificate from Let's Encrypt for 100% free. After that, we just need to add those two lines in our configuration file. And for good measure, we're going to add another location block for standalone signaling. Make sure to test your configuration again, and then we can reload our Nginx service. But before we configure the high performance backend inside our Nextcloud, we need to add a single line in our config.php. For me, that's inside a Docker volume. For you, if you have a bare metal installation, that might be in your Nextcloud directory. It's the line override protocol HTTPS. Here for me, I just added at the very end of this config file. You might not actually need this one line. I need it in my setup because I'm running everything behind a reverse proxy. So my Nextcloud would think it's still running on HTTP, even though I already have HTTPS because I'm terminating SSL at Nginx. So the traffic behind Nginx is all HTTP. And with that one single line, my Nextcloud thinks it's still HTTPS. So now let's try out if our Nextcloud high performance backend is actually working. So in here in admin settings, we already get the warning, the error here that we don't have the high performance backend in here, but we're working on that, don't worry. So we go to talk, and on the very top we have the high performance backend. We're going to add a new high performance backend. In here you're going to add the URL of your high performance backend, including HTTPS. For me, that's talk.thesysadminhub.com. In all the official documentation, it's signaling.yourdomain. I'm using talk because I'm using signaling already for my actual domain. Then we want to validate the SSL certificate because we have a real SSL certificate, and we need the shared secret. Where do you get that? That's the one from your environment file. We're going to use the signaling secret here. And then you can check the connection here, and it should look something like this. If you get a warning here because this talk version doesn't have the feature chat relay, that's absolutely okay. That will be provided in a future update. If for any reason you get an error in here, then try to refresh the page or restart all the containers and check on your secret if it's the correct secret. It should all add up if you follow it like this. But this is not all. If we go further down, we find stun servers. We're going to add a new stun server, and the stun server is simply our normal Nextcloud instance with the port 443 specified there. I like to switch things up here and have my Nextcloud as the number one, and then the stun Nextcloud at the second position. And right underneath that, this is one more thing until the high performance backend works, we need a turn server. So we're going to add a new turn server. We're going to enter the URL and the port and also the secret. Again, the turn secret is in your environment file, and here at the back, we have this little green check icon. So everything is working fine. And the best way to check if everything is working is by making a call. I will create a new conversation in here. We're going to call it test, and we're going to allow guests to join via link, and then we're going to create a conversation. And at this point, if you get this, your high performance backend is already working. If it wouldn't be working, you wouldn't get this okay here. And just like that, oops, let me mute myself here and here too. And just like that, we have a working high performance backend. How cool is that? Congratulations, you now have a working high performance backend for Nextcloud Talk. If you enjoy my content, leave a like and consider subscribing. It really helps out small channels like mine grow. Thank you for being awesome. Now let's add the recording backend. How does the recording backend work? It's simply another client that will connect to the call and then it will record its own screen. So this Docker container acts like another participant and it will record it and then it will give you the file. For that, we're going to clone this GitHub repository just like this. Then we change into Nextcloud Talk recording. In here, there is a file called server.conf.in. We're going to copy it and call it server.conf. And then we need to edit a few things in this server.conf file. The first thing to edit here is we don't want to listen to localhost. We want to listen to every IP. So we're going to change this to 0.0.0.0 and port 8000 stays the same. The second edit is the trusted proxies. So we're going to enable this. And then in here, we're going to add localhost. So it should be 127.0.0.1. Then we need to enable our backends. So we comment this one here, and then we already have one backend. So we're going to lose this one here. You can rename this backend ID if you like to something like backend 1, for example. And this backend ID is needed here in backend ID. We're going to change this to our backend ID, in my case backend 1. In here we need to enable our URL. This is the URL for your Nextcloud. So for me it's going to be nextcloud.sysadminhub.com, including the HTTPS. And then we're going to need to enable the secret, and here we're going to need the recording secret. Again, we have defined that in our environment variable for the high performance backend. In here we have one command that made us a recording secret. We're going to need this in our Nextcloud admin UI as well. Then we're going to add it here on the signaling part. We need a signaling ID. Again, you can call it however you like. Just make sure that you're going to use the same thing in here, just like this. Then we're going to uncomment the URL of our signaling server. Again, in all the documentation, it's called signaling. For me, in my video here, I call my high performance backend talk.sysadminhub.com. And then we need to enable the internal secret here. And once again, we defined that through our commands beforehand. Here in our environment file, it's this secret right here. We need to enter this here. And yes, you saw that right. You can enter another signaling server and also another backend here, meaning you can use this recording backend for multiple different Nextclouds with multiple different high performance backends, all using this one recording backend. All right, those are all the edits, so we can save this file right now. But we are not done yet with editing. Next up, we're going to go into the directory Docker Compose. And in here, there is a Docker file. We're going to edit this one as well. The Docker file on itself already works fine. I just have to add this one line here so that everything will run through IPv4 while building the image and the container. Otherwise, it wouldn't have worked for me. I don't know exactly why, but with this one line, if you encounter any errors, then add this one line in your Docker file here, and then it will work. All right, with all this edited now, we can go back into the directory for our recording backend. And in here, we're going to make a docker compose.yaml file for the recording backend. In the GitHub repository, there is already a docker compose.yaml file. I took that and just added a few things because I just switched things up here in my directory. So for context, we're going to use the Nextcloud Talk recording, which is the directory we downloaded from the GitHub. And then we have this Docker file that stays the same. And then on volumes, we're going to use this server conf file and put it directly into this container with read only. And then on networks, I just put it on a separate network just to showcase that this can be run on different servers. It doesn't have to be all on the same server. So it should look something like this. We have here my directory Docker, and then I called it recording. In here, there is this docker compose.yaml file, and in there we have from the GitHub downloaded Nextcloud Talk recording directory. And just for your understanding, to show you what's inside this Nextcloud Talk recording directory, we have here this Docker Compose. In here, there's the Docker file, and there is also this server.conf.in, which is the template, and also this server.conf, which is the one that we created and edited. And now we can run the command docker compose build. Why can't we do docker compose up-d? Because we don't have an image yet. That's what the Docker file is for. This one will build the image locally on our server, and then we can use that image to build a container for the recording backend. Unfortunately, there is no image that you can just pull from Docker Hub. And once everything is done, it should say here that the image is built. And with the image being built, we can start up our container with docker compose up-d. And with everything up and running, we just need to configure our Nginx reverse proxy, so this will be available through a subdomain. Once again, the config file is really easy. Just have the server name like your subdomain, and then the port to port 8000 if you follow my tutorial. But if you have a different port specified in your Docker Compose file, then you can absolutely use a different port here. Then we need a symbolic link in our sites enabled directory, and then we can test the configuration with nginx-t. Everything looks fine, so we can run our certbot command to request a SSL certificate. And once the certificate is deployed, we're going to reload our Nginx service here just for good measure. And now we can go back in our Talk admin settings in here with the High Performance Backend. Nothing has changed. Same goes with the stun server and the turn server. They all stay the same, and they all should still show green for you. But here we have the recording backend. We can add a new recording backend server, and you need to enter the shared secret, which is the recording secret, which again we have in our environment file. But for me, it shows an error here because my server responded with 502. Let's see why. Let's check the logs here with docker logs follow recording, and here what I can see, it's running on localhost and the port 8000, which is not correct. So we need to go in our server.conf file, and in here I forgot to comment out this one here. I said it correctly in here, but I forgot to remove this little hashtag here. So let's save this, and then let's go back and do a docker compose down and docker compose up-d. And now if we check the recording backend, it says it's okay and running with the version number here. And now we can test it out. I'm going to run docker log commands here, one for the recording backend and one for the high performance backend, so we can actually see what's happening in here. Okay, so now let's go back in our test meeting and we can start a call here. Let me mute here. Here on top, you can start recording. Okay, now I think the recording is working. The recording didn't work properly. I could see that in the log, so I had to remove the :443 here, and now it worked again. There might have been an update between my testing and the recording of this video. Okay, let me try this call again. And to record it with my phone, I can see both here properly, and then I can start the recording. By the way, I can even start the recording on my phone, so this is really nice. And it shows us that the recording has started. And if we go to the terminal, now it's showing us that it's writing everything in here, and also the high performance backend is working properly and fine. So let's end this call here, and the recording we will find under files, talk. There you see recording, and in here we have our recording. So we have the second one. This is 1 minute ago. So let's have a look at this one. And in here we have the recording. Sorry for the messy background here. That's from my other camera in here. It's kind of laggy, but that's because of the buffering here. My internet today this morning is not good at all, but it's working and it's recording everything. I will add a clip of a recording here after I finished wrapping up this video, so you can see how the recording looks like and feels like with multiple participants under better conditions with better internet connection. Don't worry, it's not always laggy like this. You can see the log of the recording backend. Then the second one is the log of the high performance backend. The third one is just the overall usage of CPU and memory. You can see here the recording backend uses 258% of CPU. And then we have the talk backend is rather busy, but nothing on the Nextcloud app and Nextcloud database. They're just working normally. And then on the bottom, you can see the overall usage of the Linux host. Can you see that properly? Yes. which is 4 CPUs and 8 gigabytes of RAM. RAM is rather fine. It doesn't even use 3 gigabytes of RAM, but the CPU usage, you can see it's pretty heavy on the CPU right now. And if I stop sharing here, I mute myself here. Okay. Yeah, now that's better. Now on the recording, you should see me talking from here. And if I mute myself here and unmute myself here, then you should see me talking from this laptop here. It looks pretty crazy. I lost internet connection there for a second, but I think it's working fine again. So this is the high performance backend. So far, works pretty good, I guess. Now the question, can this replace Zoom or Teams for everyone? Honestly, no. Not for everyone. Solutions like Microsoft Teams and Zoom and others have more back-end resources, and their recording quality is simply more advanced. So Teams and Zoom have an advantage here resource-wise. But if you care about data control, privacy, self-hosting and owning your infrastructure, then this setup becomes really interesting. You'll have to decide for yourself whether Nextcloud Talk can be a real alternative for your use case. For me and my current needs, it's absolutely more than enough. And it works really well if your internet connection is stable. So yes, for my use cases, Nextcloud Talk has efficiently replaced Teams and Zoom. But for me, it's not about replacing Teams or Zoom or any other solution there. Self-hosting and open source solutions are about choosing control over your data and privacy. But I'm curious, what about you? Can Nextcloud Talk replace your current meeting solution? Let me know in the comments. If this helped you understand Nextcloud Talk better, leave a like and consider subscribing. Thank you so much for watching and see you next time.